When I was about 28 years old, I lived in downtown Los Angeles with my boyfriend. We were both comedians who often travelled out of the city, but rarely together since we had a dog that we just couldn't leave at home alone. My boyfriend had left 2 days prior to do some shows in the Sierra Nevada mountains. I stayed home to watch our dog and to go to my regular job, which at the time was a bartender. One night, after closing the bar and returning home, I walked our dog, fed him, and then we both climbed into our loft bed, which was situated above our couch. I probably fell asleep at around 2:30 a.m. that night, because I didn't get home till about 2 a.m. on nights such as these. We had this wonderful neighbour across the hall, a man that we affectionately called Coach, due to the fact that he's once a youth basketball coach before taking his time to enjoy retirement. Coach was a big man, large, over 6 feet easily, and filled with love. He would occasionally come over to hang out, smoke a joint, eat some dinner, and watch basketball. Well, this morning at around 5 a.m, I could hear Coach banging on everyone's door in the apartment, screaming at them that they needed to get out. In my fatigued state, I don't even think that. I realised he was yelling fire. I shook myself out of my stupor, gathered my senses, and grabbed my dog, and headed for the front door. As I touched the doorknob, it was scalding hot. You remember that scene from Home Alone, where Joe Pesci's character touches the hot doorknob that leaves an imprint on his hand? It was exactly like that. I was able to get the door open, but I met a wall of black smoke. But all the while I could hear Coach's reassuring voice, urging and directing everyone down the hall to the exit. Once we made it outside, all of us residents waited for the LA Fire Department and Police Department to arrive and investigate the house. Within an hour or so, they obtained security footage, and the police began to gradually question all of us individually, asking if we knew anything about the fire and if we would view the footage that they found. My neighbour down the hall, a girl my age, had a sketchy boyfriend in her life. Apparently he had broken into the building by navigating through back alleyways and hopping fences before scaling the fire escape. In the security footage, you can see him casually stroll down the hallway after making entry, before beginning to walk backwards from where he entered, dumping a 5-gallon can of gasoline. As he walked by, then he simply lit a match, tossed it into the carpeted floor before disappearing into the night, using the fire escape that he had used to enter. All of us residents watched the footage in horror as the entire hallway quickly became engulfed in flames. It wasn't until later on that we learned that my neighbour had recently dumped a man for being abusive and harassing her. What scares me to high heavens is the fact that he's willing to burn down an entire apartment building just to gain retribution. Thanks to the rapid response of the fire department, the flames were contained to a single floor of the building, and overall, the damage wasn't too terrible. While some of the residents who had their apartments right by where the flames began were unable to return to their homes, most of us were able to resume life as normal. While I'm grateful for the fire department's response, it was Coach's swift thinking and bravery that might have very well saved a lot of lives that day. Our front doors all latched very strongly, and before I opened my door that morning, I couldn't even smell smoke. It's terrifying to think how long that inferno could have raged before any of us would have known anything was amiss. A few weeks go by, and a level of normalcy is restored. I don't believe the cops initially found the suspected arsonist, but thankfully he never came back. The story took place about 15 years ago, when I had just come home from college on winter break. Home this time was not the house that I grew up in. My parents had just recently moved away from our small city and out into rural parts of our county, so it just didn't feel the same to be in a different space. Maybe that's what triggered my worry that night. In my family, I'm always the one thinking of worst case scenarios, generally distrustful of others and mostly seeming like the annoying worrywart. Call it what you will, but in certain situations, it's also the gift of fear. One cold night my parents had gone to bed upstairs and our big dog had followed suit. I thought that I'd watch TV in the living room for a bit before going to sleep myself. I settled on the couch in the living room. It was in the front of the house, and with the recent move, the shutters on the window weren't there at the time. Only see-through curtains that weren't really drawn. I noticed this, but I was used to it at our old house, where the only ones that could see in was the neighbours that we knew so well. I'm watching TV for about a half hour when the screen just cuts out. The entire TV goes snowy. Back then, my parents didn't spring for the extended cable package. You just watched whatever your local channels brought you. I looked up from whatever I was doing to distract myself at that moment. Texting maybe. At first thinking, well, this TV sucks. I tried a remote, but no other channels worked. And so I was just sitting there thinking about what I should do instead. When all of a sudden my cat jumps up onto the windowsill and starts wailing. Now this may seem innocuous, but anyone who knew my cat knew that this was not par of the course. He was pacing and wailing at the window, and that's when a feeling of dread washed through me, and I found myself frozen on that couch. The feeling of dread is one that's so fiercely visceral that all I could do was think, what the hell is going on? What's out there? I tried to settle myself down in this unfamiliar dark house, and by some stroke of luck I was able to do just that. But then, there it was. I swear on all I have in this world, that the cold whiff of air blew right through the house, and that's when I heard the side door open. At this point, I didn't even realise that this house had a side door, but I heard it, and I felt the burst of air. I instantly became unfrozen, and that's when I bolted. I ran upstairs to wake my parents and my slumbering dog, and I frantically tell them that someone is trying to get into the house. They, I think, were a little bit annoyed. I'm a warrior, remember? But still, they get up, and I think they're just trying to humour me by looking around the house. They go check all the rooms, including the basement. They're sleepily roaming around into dark rooms unarmed, when God knows who has probably made it inside already. Well, they didn't find anything. They just verbally patted me on the head and said good night. Needless to say, I felt foolish. That is until the next morning. I don't know what prompted my parents to call the police, but sure enough, 2 officers showed up and asked me how I knew someone was out there. I started answering, well, the cat was meowing a lot on the windowsill, and that's when my voice kinda just trailed off, waiting for the reaction that I usually would get, and which I did get. The cop smirks, a cat, okay bro, get on with it. He goes on to say that someone cut the cable wires at the side of the house, and someone thought that they were disarming some alarm, or maybe they saw me sitting watching TV and wanted to mess with me. And the side door, the muddy ground around the side of the house, gave us the ability to see fresh tracks leading right up to the door itself. It didn't look like that it had been messed with, but I knew what I heard, whatever that was. I knew it, I said to my parents. That triumphant feeling was short-lived though. When I started to mould it over, what I was so sure had been true. True, I knew that someone was outside the house in the dead of night, the night before. True, I knew that our cable line had been purposely cut. What I didn't know and still don't know to this day is why these things were done. If I close my eyes, I can still get that cold gust of wind sweep right over me from that night. Did they make it into the house? What scared them off? What was the plan? All I know for sure is that when I visit my parents, who still live in the same house, now I check that side door every night. I also pay special attention to any strange cues that I pick up from the pets. I met this guy on a popular dating app. He's the same age as me, 25, and he teaches middle and high schoolers. He loves to cook and to be adventurous. He's funny, and he really seems like the whole package. And at first, we got along amazingly. We had a lovely first date. We went to a bar, got a drink, and then took a stroll out for ice cream. We parted ways after this, and he asked if he could see me again, but didn't even try to kiss me. Honestly, it was refreshing. I feel like people so often rush intimacy, so I appreciated the slower pace. We went on several more great dates over the next few weeks. My favourite one was going roller skating, followed by an arcade. Then we nightcap for a beer and some pool. At this point, we're getting pretty comfortable with each other, getting a little handsy, making out a bunch, but mostly filling out days with fun activities. We really got into playing pool with each other and would end most of our dates this way. We were a little tipsy one night, curled up in the corner of my favourite bar, when he asked me, if you could go back and change anything about your life, what would it be? Now I don't know why I picked this event out of everything, but I picked this one encounter I had as a child. I was a ballet dancer, and this much older man was extremely inappropriate with us, younger dancers. I briefly told him the story, said that I wished that it never happened, or at the very least that the creep would have gotten kicked out. He was sympathetic and caring to the story. I asked him the same question in response. If you could go back and change anything about your life, what would it be? He glanced down and then back up at me, and he let out a deep sigh and said, well, I hooked up with a 15-year-old a few months ago. Obviously shocked and not quite sure that I heard him correctly, I asked him to explain exactly how that would happen. He told me that he met her off a dating website and had quite no idea she was underage, but found out after they had slept together. Then he continued to hang out with her, but they did nothing sexual, they were just friends. I asked him why he would be friends with this kid he accidentally banged, and he said that he just liked the attention. Not only do I absolutely not believe that he didn't know that she's 15, I mean, he spends all his days with middle and high schoolers, but I seriously don't believe that he didn't do anything further. Mr. I like the attention. This was obviously and completely repulsive and pathetic admission. Needless to say, I didn't see him any further, and I'm glad that I dodged that bullet. I wanted to do something, like take some sort of action, but I wasn't sure what to do, because I had no proof that this ever really happened, nor did I know the girl's name. So I called the SA hotline and asked them for advice. The very nice lady told me the cops would be pretty useless in this situation, since I don't have any concrete information. But she did say that I can contact our state's Board of Education, and they would automatically launch an investigation based around such accusations. I know that it's not much, but it's seriously the best I could do. Thanks a million to everyone who likes, comments and subscribes on my videos. I really appreciate it. If you enjoy these stories, you will enjoy the next 3 stories in the box above. Thank you.